At 6 in the morning, while the executive floor was still dark, a janitor in gray pushed a wet mop across the polished stone. His name was stitched above the pocket. Michael. 2 cubicles away, Tom shifted his weight and leaned toward Lisa. Their voices barely carried.
Did you hear about the layoffs? They're saying 40 people.
I heard it from HR this morning. My name might be on the list.
The mop stopped. Michael turned the handle, wiped the same dry tile, and listened.
And his own father. He demoted his own father to janitor.
Michael's face barely changed. A low, knowing smile settled in the corner of his mouth. He never argued when he was demoted. He simply waited. He had waited 10 months, and he still owned 71%. A man who built a company from nothing doesn't need to raise his voice. The building itself was his reply. He was not a victim. He was the trap. 3 years earlier, Michael Reeves transferred operational control to his son, Christopher. It looked like a retirement gift. At the end of the meeting, Christopher slid a polished leather key fob across the table.
It's a Bentley. You earned it, Dad.
I don't need a luxury car. Take it back.
That evening, Jennifer found Christopher fuming in his office.
He humiliated you. If your father won't accept your generosity, then he doesn't deserve a seat at the table.
The next morning, Christopher met him outside the mailroom and handed him a folded gray uniform.
Until you learn respect, you'll earn it the hard way. Facility custodian.
Michael took the uniform without a word. In the locker room, he buttoned it slowly, staring at his own reflection. He still controlled Bellwether through a holding company. 71%. His son never bothered to look. Every morning at 6, Michael pushed his mop past the glass-walled conference rooms. He heard everything. Inside the smallest one, Jennifer Reeves paced with her phone pressed to her ear.
Yes, the Edgeworth Solutions account is set up. The payments will be coded as consulting fees.
Michael's rags stopped dead on the floor. He didn't move. He listened.
No one will trace it back to me. My husband runs the company and I run the consultancy.
The words settled into his chest like cold stone. His son's wife was looting the company.
A shell consultancy. And Christopher is either too blind or too arrogant to see it.
He set the mop aside and pulled a worn notebook from his shirt pocket. He wrote the date, the name Edgeworth, and the word consultancy. Then he underlined it twice. 10 months he had waited. Now, the real waiting began. The months turned like slow water. Michael kept his mop and his silence. His notebook thickened with dates, dollar amounts, and the same name repeated, Edgeworth. Around him, the office grew quieter. Conversations stopped when managers walked past.
They're cutting whole departments. My friend in accounting said the list is final.
And the guy who signs it, he'll be in a Bentley while we get a box for our desks.
Late that night, in his modest apartment, Michael spread the documents across his kitchen table.
71%. More than enough to end this.
He took a clean envelope and wrote across the front, quarterly review, mandatory attendance. He sealed it, stamped it, and dropped it into the board correspondence tray before dawn. The trap was set. All he had to do was walk into the room. Christopher found the envelope on his desk Monday morning. He turned it over, read the word mandatory, and smirked.
Quarterly review. What a waste of time.
Jennifer stepped into his office, tablet in hand. She had seen the same invitation.
Don't dismiss it. This is our moment. Announce the layoffs and the board will have no choice but to approve.
Christopher pulled up the redundancy plan. 40 names, each one a salary off the books.
Every quarter, we cut deeper. The margins look better every time.
He scrolled through the list. Logistics, IT, call center. Good people. But good people didn't show on a balance sheet.
And after the cuts, Edgeworth Solutions will still have its contracts. Untouchable.
She smiled, cold and satisfied. None of them knew that the man who mopped their floors had already read every name. Friday. The board would meet, and the trap would spring. The night before the board meeting, Michael placed a call from a quiet corridor. His voice was low, direct.
Marcus, it's time.
In the security office, Marcus sealed a thick folder with heavy tape. Across the front, he wrote, eyes only. A few minutes later, Michael entered the windowless room. He took the folder and checked the seal.
You know what to do. When I signal during the board meeting, you bring this to me.
Understood, Mr. Reeves. On your signal.
Michael placed the folder on the desk between them. Then he patted his own shirt pocket, where the Edgeworth evidence sat.
If they try to remove me before the signal, you step in. You report only to me.
Marcus slid the folder into a secure drawer. He had been with Bellwether since the first year. He knew who really ran the place. Michael walked out into the dark corridor. In 8 hours, the board would walk straight into the teeth of a trap they never saw coming. Friday morning arrived, cold and quiet. By 5:30, Michael was already on the executive floor, pushing his mop in long, slow arcs. At 7, Edward and Sarah stepped off the elevator. They walked past him without breaking stride, a faint nod the only acknowledgement.
Your janitor works early.
Christopher appeared at the end of the hall, suit pressed, eyes on his phone. He didn't look at his father.
Let's get started. We have a lot to cover.
Michael followed them into the room and crouched by the far window, wiping the sill with his rag. The glass reflected the whole table.
You built this room, Michael. They just forgot.
Edward glanced over, then turned his attention to the slides. The janitor was invisible, just another piece of furniture. Sarah adjusted her glasses and opened her notebook. Christopher dimmed the lights with a remote, and in the corner, hidden in plain sight, the man who owned it all simply watched. He had waited 10 months. He could wait a few more minutes. Christopher clicked to a slide titled Operational Efficiency. The graph told a flat story.
Revenue is up 4%. We've trimmed waste, consolidated routes.
He clicked again. The next slide read, Cost Optimization, Proposed Adjustments.
Margins are still under pressure. Hard decisions are unavoidable if we want to stay lean.
We've been cutting R&D for 2 quarters. Is that the kind of lean you mean?
R&D is a luxury when the bottom line is stagnant. We'll revisit it next fiscal year.
Sarah uncapped her pen, then recapped it. She hadn't written a word. In the corner, Michael's hand slowly closed around the rag until his knuckles went white.
Everything I propose is for the long-term health of this company. You'll see the full picture in a moment.
The next slide was still black, but everyone could feel it coming. A door none of them could close. Christopher clicked the remote. The black screen dissolved into the words, Strategic Workforce Realignment.
To secure a 12% margin increase, we must eliminate 40 positions, effective immediately.
He said it like a weather report, as though 40 families were just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Logistics, IT, call center. The full list will be distributed after this meeting.
This is drastic. You can't expect us to approve this without a full review and consultation with the staff.
There have to be alternatives. What about voluntary redundancies, early retirement packages before we throw these people out?
In the break room, the screen mirrored the boardroom feed. Tom stared at his own name on the list. Lisa covered her mouth. The list had her name, plain as day.
We're out.
In the boardroom, Michael traced the edge of his mop handle. His face was stone, but his eyes were fire. Michael set the mop against the wall. The wooden handle clicked against the tile, louder than any voice in the room. He straightened, rolled his shoulders, and walked to the center of the table. The rag hung limp over his shoulder.
Dad, this is a closed board meeting. You don't belong here. Leave.
Actually, son, I have something to contribute.
Let the man speak. Who are you?
He's just the custodian. My father. He's confused.
I am not confused. I've been watching this company longer than anyone here.
Sarah leaned forward, her pen forgotten. Edward removed his glasses.
Before you approve 40 layoffs, you might want to hear what the janitor has to say.
Christopher's jaw tightened. For the first time, the room was silent, and the man in gray stood at its center.
First question. Why have consultancy fees tripled in the last 2 quarters?
That's confidential executive detail. Not something a custodian needs to worry about.
Michael didn't blink. He had seen the spreadsheets.
Odd, because the invoices are all addressed to the same small firm, Edgeworth Solutions.
At the far end of the table, Jennifer's tablet slipped in her hands. She caught it, but the sound was loud in the silence.
Wait, who owns Edgeworth Solutions?
Christopher's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced at Jennifer, then back at the board.
That's irrelevant. The ownership structure of external vendors is not up for discussion.
But his voice cracked on irrelevant. Edward set his glasses on the table and folded his arms.
Irrelevant. Then you won't mind if I show the board the payment records.
Michael reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. The numbers were clear, even through the creases.
3 payments. 47,000. 82,000. 135,000. All to Edgeworth Solutions.
Jennifer shot to her feet. Her chair scraped the floor.
That's a lie. Those documents are forged. You are just a bitter old man.
The account is registered to a P.O. box in your maiden name, Jennifer. I have the bank's verification stamp.
Edward turned to Christopher, his voice low and dangerous.
Is this true, Christopher? Were you aware your wife was siphoning company funds?
Christopher's face drained of color. He looked at Jennifer, then at the document in Michael's hand.
I didn't know.
In the corner, the mop stood against the wall. But Michael had not yet shown his final card. Christopher's face went from pale to crimson. He slammed both palms on the table.
Marcus, security. Remove this man immediately.
Michael didn't move. He simply turned his head toward the glass door.
Marcus, that's an excellent idea. I was hoping you'd call him.
He raised one hand, a small gesture. On the other side of the glass, Marcus nodded and stepped forward. The board members exchanged confused glances. Sarah half rose from her seat.
What is this? Why is he responding to you?
You are about to find out what a janitor sees when he cleans the whole building.
Christopher's eyes flicked to Jennifer, then to the door. His authority was slipping through his fingers. Marcus's hand touched the door handle, and Michael finally let the smile reach his eyes. Marcus stepped through the glass door and walked to the table. The room held its breath.
Here you are, Mr. Reeves.
He's a janitor. Marcus. Why are you calling him Mr. Reeves?
Because Marcus reports to the man who built this company. And that man is me.
Jennifer sank back into her chair, her face drained of all color. Michael hooked a thumb under the seal. The rip echoed across the polished table. Edward and Sarah leaned forward. Whatever they had expected, it wasn't this. Christopher's protests died in his throat. He stared at the folder like it was a live grenade. Michael let the silence stretch. He had waited 10 months. 5 more seconds was nothing. Then, he lifted the cover and pulled out the first page. Michael looked at the page but did not turn it toward the room. His voice carried the weight of decades.
Bellwether Logistics was founded in 1989. I know, because I founded it.
The words landed like stones. Edward half rose. Sarah gripped the table edge. Christopher's eyes widened, then narrowed. He lunged across the table toward the folder, but Marcus stepped between them, one hand blocking Christopher's chest, the other on his belt.
Sit down, Christopher.
The janitor uniform was suddenly armor. Christopher stumbled back, his face a mask of rage and fear. Michael lifted the page slightly, the text still hidden from the board. The state seal at the bottom glinted.
This company has watched you squander its future. Now you'll see who's been watching back.
The room held its breath. The folder lay open, but its most dangerous secret was still inside. Michael pulled the document fully from the folder. The thick parchment bore a state seal at the bottom, and across the top, in bold script, the words Certificate of Ownership. Christopher's breath caught. His face turned the color of cold ash. Jennifer's legs gave way. She dropped into her chair, her voice a trembling whisper.
It's forged. It has to be.
My God. That's the original state-certified charter.
Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth. Around the table, gasps filled the silence.
That's not possible. I've been CEO for 3 years.
You were CEO because I signed the paperwork. You never checked who owned the building. You should have researched the holding company, son.
The certificate lay on the polished wood, undeniable, and still, Michael hadn't spoken the number.
Michael Reeves holds 71% of all shares in Bellwether Logistics. That is controlling interest.
The number fell into the silence and broke it open. No one in the room exhaled. Sarah took the certificate with both hands. Her fingers traced the embossed state seal.
It's valid. The state seal authenticates it.
Why? Why didn't you say something? All this time, you let him.
Because I needed to see what kind of man my son had become. I saw enough.
Christopher dropped into his chair as though his muscles had turned to water.
This changes nothing. The board still has authority over operational matters.
The board answers to the majority shareholder. That's me.
Edward removed his glasses and nodded slowly. Sarah laid the certificate on the table. The room belonged to the man in the gray uniform.
As majority shareholder, I call a vote of no confidence in Christopher Reeves as CEO.
Seconded.
I vote my 71% in favor. The motion carries. I am now CEO.
Christopher stood motionless. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The title had been stripped with 4 words.
My first act as CEO. Bellwether terminates all contracts with Edgeworth Solutions, effective immediately.
You can't do this. I'll sue. I'll take this company apart.
Nobody looked at her. Edward was already writing the termination letter in his notebook. Jennifer's voice cracked. She looked at Christopher, but he stared at the floor as if it might swallow him.
You are finished, Jennifer. The company you tried to bleed will clot without you.
The man in gray had taken back his company, and the uniform was no longer a costume. Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded sheet. It was the same redundancy list Christopher had read moments before.
I hereby reverse every termination. These 40 people keep their jobs, with full back pay.
He began reading aloud, each name a deliberate, quiet strike against the silence.
Tom Hargrove, Logistics.
In the break room, Tom froze, then stumbled into a chair. His name, his job.
Lisa Pendleton, Eat.
Lisa grabbed Tom's arm, tears streaming. The screen behind them updated. Termination reversed. He read on, each syllable a restoration. The list grew shorter, the room heavier with relief. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Christopher dropped his head into his hands. When the final name fell, 40 lives had been returned. The man in gray had reclaimed more than a company. He had reclaimed its soul. Michael gestured to Marcus. Without a word, the guard took Christopher by the arm and Jennifer by the elbow.
You'll regret this. All of you.
Christopher did not speak. He looked back once, then let the door close behind him. Michael walked to the head of the table and lowered himself into the CEO chair. The gray uniform settled against the leather, as if it belonged.
Do you plan to change out of that?
Number. I'll wear it to every board meeting from now on.
Sarah let out a soft breath, almost a laugh. The tension in the room cracked into something lighter.
It reminds me who really runs this place. The people who keep it clean.
He picked up the rag from his shoulder and looked out the glass wall at the city below. His city, his company. The uniform would stay, not as a reminder of humiliation, but of who had the patience to wait and the strength to rebuild. And the strength to rebuild. The boardroom emptied one by one. Edward and Sarah were the last to leave, their footsteps fading into the corridor. Michael stood alone, the silence no longer an enemy, but an old friend. From his shirt pocket, he drew a worn photograph. A much younger man in a hard hat stood beside a small sign. Bellwether, 1989.
We built it together, kid, and we're still here.
The faint smile stayed as he folded the photograph back into his pocket and picked up his mop. That night, in his modest kitchen, the gray uniform hung on a hook by the pantry. He sat at the wooden table, the thick folder open beside the photograph. 2 pieces of a life, finally aligned.
Not bad for a janitor.
Outside the window, the city hummed, indifferent and eternal. Inside, the only sound was the soft ticking of a clock older than the company itself. Michael Reeves had built something that outlasted betrayal, that was worth more than any percentage. Some men build empires to prove something. Michael Reeves built his to protect it. Every morning, a Tacoma with a cracked mirror pulled into the Bellwether lot before the sun rose. On the passenger seat, a pair of worn gardening gloves lay next to a coffee cup. Upstairs, the janitor's closet stood empty, except for a single mop leaning against the cinder block. That room had been a quiet command post, the place where a man in gray planned for 10 months. Now, the truck sat in its usual spot, the rising sun catching the crack in the side mirror. In that fractured reflection, the bellwether tower stood tall, glass, steel, and everything he built. A man who owned 71% drove home in a truck worth $3,000. Because the measure of a man is not his office, it is his patience, and Michael Reeves had outlasted them all.